All right, well, I think we'll get started. I don't see anyone else dialing in right now. So thanks for joining us tonight for this super exciting topic of ONCA. So I'm going to start off by telling you that I love to support clubs in the district with things going on, but I am not an ONCA expert in the slightest. But Dave Daglish, who is from the Rotary Club of Stratford, my home club, has been working diligently over the last few years with some other members of our club to make sure that we've got our affairs in order for when ONCA takes place. It's already taken place, correct, David? But we have until October 18th of 2024 to be fully compliant.
That's right. It was brought into effect last October, and there's 3 years to comply. Right.
Okay. So we've still got, plenty of time to make this happen. But for some people, for some clubs, this is brand new, and others are a little further along the way towards compliance. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dave Daglish, and he's going to just go through what ONCA is and what we need to do to start being prepared for that. So take it away, Dave.
Okay. So ONCA is the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, and it replaced the not-for-profit section of the old Corporations Act, which covered all corporations. What we have with most of the clubs that are really involved with ONCA is that there's our club is a good example. We are actually three entities in one. We're a social club that is operating under the constitution that was provided for us by Rotary International. And they say we can't change that. We are a Rotary club, which has some revenues, some expenses, gets money coming through, and we're a not-for-profit organization. We also have our own foundation, which was given to us. We started because there were some very generous contributors and left legacy bequests and such that we are dispersing money for charitable operations within Stratford, for example, some scholarships for post-secondary students and others. And that is a charitable organization. So we have a whole bunch of different aspects to our specific club. So we were terribly tangled up legally. And so we've spent the last 10 years now getting that untangled, which required filing new information with the CRA as to what our charitable operations are. That whole thing is still evolving. I was on a web legal, not-for-profit legal webinar this morning, listening to all the changes that are still being changed, affecting how much money you can give away, how much money you have to give away, and how to manage your affairs. So we've had to go down this road. ONCA was enacted in 2010, but not proclaimed, so not put into effect. And it's had a few tweaks and twigs along the way. So we were getting ready for it. So we prepared our bylaws for our charitable foundation to meet the ONCA rules. And then when it was finally proclaimed last year, the rules have changed a little bit. So we're still working towards it. We have a lawyer in town who's worked himself up on the ins and outs of ONCA and is giving us some good advice. So we're almost done with our charitable foundation. Once that's finished up, then we can go ahead and do our club. But one of the things that keeps changing is how your documents get set up. Most of us have letters patent, which is how we founded our club in the first place, and the original filing of the corporation. It's a not-for-profit corporation, but essentially it's a corporation. What our aims are and how we're going to operate. Then we had a set of bylaws which act in conjunction with that as to how we exactly operate. One thing that is causing some difficulties is that ONCA has changed where certain things have to be declared because bylaws can be very easily changed and letters patent can't. So they don't want you to be changing certain things willy-nilly as you go forward, such as, for example, the number of directors you have on your board. You can define a minimum and maximum number, but you have to have that in your letters patent, in your very formal, legally filed documents. Also, it's types of membership is a real sticking point for the people looking at the ONCA regulations. We've had to change. We have a number of honorary members of the club, but we can't really call them members because we don't permit honorary members to vote on club activities and foundation activities. So, for example, that is one thing that ONCA is restricting. So there's lots of ins and outs, particularly if you have a charitable part of your operation. So I was thinking that we could look at where everybody is. Have you done anything about ONCA? Have you done nothing about ONCA? You're almost done. Have you looked into it yourself? So maybe Catherine, you could, you've got the list of the various groups. Maybe you could walk through and call on each person to sort of say where they are on their ONCA journey.
Yeah, so maybe if you guys want to each unmute yourself, and we know where most of you are from. Not everybody has their club name on their title there, but just let us know. Let's start with Rick. You're Rotary Club of London.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. We have not actually gotten our group together. We have identified members of our club that are going to assist in this endeavor. We're an incorporated Rotary Club, province of Ontario, with letters patent. We recently updated some of our letters patent, and we've got our secretary online here, Jim Belton. He can correct me if I make a misstatement here. Because we reorganized our club a few years ago, or just in the last year, actually. So we had to do a lot of updating in that. We basically shrunk our board, but we have a board of 10. So the way we see it, I've done a little bit of web research on ONCA, and where we see it, what we're going to have to do is to take our existing documents for the club, and we also have a foundation, which is as well incorporated. And our foundation will have to go through the exercise too of reviewing the letters patent, articles of incorporation, and the related bylaws, and all of the updated memos, and then go through the sections of ONCA that relate to each section of our documents, and see where we have to modify some of our documents to make sure we will be in compliance. Our foundation is a separate, distinct entity with its own board of directors, as is our Rotary Club. However, what they do share is identical membership. So if you're a member of the Rotary Club of London, then you are also a member of the Rotary Club of London Foundation and get to vote at annual general meetings and to hold the board accountable for the operation of the foundation and the club. We have defined our membership. We have active members and non-active members. Rotary Club of London active members can vote and participate in the running of the club. Honorary Rotarians in our club do not have any vote, but they get to participate in our Rotary Club activities if they so wish. However, they have no say, they have no influence on the operation of the Rotary Club and or the foundation. As part of our club, we have a satellite club, and they are active members of the Rotary Club of London, but they're basically a subcommittee, and they run their own state of affairs, and that might take a little bit of work for us to make sure that whatever they're doing is in compliance with the ONCA. But that's where we're at. We're not at the stage where we have detailed specifically what we have to do to update our bylaws, amendments, and letters patent, et cetera, to make sure we'll be in compliance in the next 2 years.
Okay, great.
That's it.
Jim, do you have anything you want to add to that, since you and Rick are in the same club?
No, I would think our bylaws spell out everything that both the Rotary Club of London can do and the Rotary Satellite Club of London Centennial can do. So it's all spelled out in the bylaws. I have not shared the revised bylaws with the Ontario government, but I guess we'll have to do that
eventually.
And I think I also work for Hutton House, and I'm on a staff person working with the Hutton House Foundation. In both cases, we've gone through this at that level. And what we've done as far as the board is concerned is just a minimum and a maximum. And that way you're not going to get caught if you try making changes like we have done with our bylaws. We've gone from 16 down to 10. But I think we just need to have a
No. Save it for later. I don't think you guys are really hungry at the moment, so let's save that for later.
We're just going to mute Charlene. Sorry about that. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I think, we need to take a closer look at it and see what it is we have to change and get it changed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rick and Jim. Dave, do you want to add anything at this point, or do you want to wait until everyone has gone through to make some comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond briefly to Rick's comment, is that, if the words used are very, very important. So if you call them honorary members, that gets you into trouble. Calling them honorary Rotarians is by far the best measure, because then you don't have to explain anything.
Yes, that's one thing that we had to make a few changes in our bylaws, didn't we, Dave? I remember that very, very clearly. Great. Okay. Thanks, Rick and Jim. How about Howard? Do you want to go next and just let us know? I've forgotten which club you belong to, Howard.
I belong to the London Club too.
Okay.
So I've been spoken for.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to George.
I'm assuming I'm the only George on the call. So
Right. Yes, you are.
yeah. So we're basically at the very beginning. We started trying to collect the documents and we cannot locate our letters patent. So far I've been able to get a company key. So I've registered with the Ontario government, the company's branch, whatever it is. And the next step is to obtain a copy of our letters patent so we know what they contain. And then we can go forward from there. And then I'm just curious to find out what the requirements for the bylaws might be. And timing is good because we were talking about reviewing and revising our bylaws. So we might as well do them in accordance with the ONCA requirements. So that's where we're at.
Are you a very complex organization? Do you have much in the way of holdings or charitable operations?
We have a registered charitable trust, which is incorporated, which is the one that we need the letters patent for. And then we basically operate a general account for, the club meals and member expenses, that kind of thing that the members pay into. And then we have a benevolent account that we put donations in that do not require tax receipts. And then we have our trust account that we put donations in that require tax receipts. So basically, is that complex? I'm not sure. But it's one, we basically think of ourselves as one organization, but I think that, we probably could break it down into two, the incorporated side and the unincorporated side.
Yeah.
Unless ONCA is going to force us to operate the whole thing under the charitable trust.
ONCA doesn't do that. It's more the CRA that does that. And it makes it easier to have, in many cases, it makes it easier to have the charitable tax receiving operation and the club, the operation of the social club as two distinct entities.
Great. Thank you.
If I may make a comment,
Sure, go ahead,
part
Rick.
of the reason that we retain funds in our club, the Rotary Club of London, so we can do things that have a greater degree of flexibility in the community that the foundation can't do, because they are subject to some very rigorous CRA rules and regulations and that. So that's why, and our Rotary Club is incorporated, and we did that years and years ago for liability purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So the members would be protected under the veil of an incorporated entity.
And is that the same corporation as the charitable corporation?
No, they're two distinct separate corporations
Okay.
with two distinct separate boards.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically why we run a benevolent account, because it's very flexible where we can spend the money. And the trust account, it's for qualified donees only. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, George. Peter Morton from Festival City, would you like to go ahead and let us know how you're making it with your ONCA compliance?
Well, having worked for the government for 10 years, I'm not surprised that it took them almost 12 years to get this thing finally going. And it's the same ministry that I worked for. So we've started I was hoping that our president, I'm the treasurer of the foundation. So I was hoping that our president would sit in, because Bob is very knowledgeable of ONCA and how it operates. And he was instrumental in having the bylaws reworked for both the club and for the foundation. So we are two separate entities as far as board structure is concerned. Mm-hmm. We have 6 members on the board, and 2 of those members are appointed from the club board. So 4 are elected directly from the members, who have, Rick has aptly mentioned before, they're the same members as members of the club, members of the foundation, they're one and the same. So I've been sort of honing in on some of the presentations that have been made with respect to ONCA for 2 reasons, not only for our club, but I also am the chair of the House of Blessing in Stratford. So that's a not-for-profit food bank. And we have been advised to hang tough until 2023 to engage lawyers who are experienced in food banks to actually deal with that. Because for, I think what David had mentioned, the government hasn't finished fiddling around with the regulations yet. And we knew that was coming. We heard that once it got passed in last year, that don't get too excited yet because they haven't fine-tuned it. So that makes it even more difficult for the ordinary person to get their head around this thing. So we're in the process. The thing we have not, so we're 2 separate incorporations. So the club is incorporated, the foundation is incorporated. We already have our, I think George mentioned it, we'd already applied to the province to be able to deal with online access to anything that was filed provincially. We have our letters patent. And by the way, George, we found ours in a lawyer's office. But for years, we didn't know where ours was either. And if you have any difficulties there in actually finding your letters patent or getting the municipality to help you out, I still have contacts at the ministry that I can fire an email off to and say, by the way, can you help us out? Where do we go? Who do we contact? Can you give us some assistance for not-for-profit organizations? And so maybe just sort of keep that in mind. Anyway, the one thing and really a question I have for David is, in one of the seminars I was listening to, they're talking about the filing of amended articles. Now, we haven't done any of that, but one of these is mandatory, drafting and filing articles of amendment And then the other is whether we possibly have to draft and file the articles of incorporation, a separate animal unto itself. But we haven't got into that yet. So we're along, but we're far from done.
Yeah. Well, before I forget, just a disclaimer: I am not a lawyer. I'm an engineer, but I've been working on this, taking over from somebody who started it, as I say, about 10 years ago. As far as I've been able to understand, is that the amendments are to supplement the letters patent, to put the pieces that ONCA wants in your letters patent in. It doesn't seem to be that you have to reincorporate or change.
No. Apparently they say, but if you don't file the particularly the articles of amendment, that they'll just accept what's in there or currently in your letters patent. So, I mean, if there's things that need to be altered or changed or adjusted, they got to be done, I guess. What they did when they said that there's a 3-year window to adjust to meet ONCA is that at the end of the 3 years, if you have not done anything or if you've not completed, you will deem to be complying with ONCA. But the lawyers that were talking this morning had no idea what that really meant. So we could end up with a situation that we don't want. So I think that the encouragement is to act sooner rather than later. Well, it's an interesting document to get your head around. Even you can read through all the government postings and everything that they've got on their websites, and I'm still confused. So, and by the way, David, I'm a retired Ontario and Canada land surveyor, so I work closely with engineers. So that's good. I am not a lawyer, but I work closely with them too. And when I was with the ministry, I was in the legislative. So we were involved in writing and amending statutes and regulations. And then you'd give them to a lawyer, and all of a sudden they changed to a point where we couldn't understand them. So I'm just saying it's a complex topic, and I think that, eventually we'll all get through it, but it's good that we're all talking together so that we at least can land on our feet, on the same, hopefully all the same. Anyway, as you say, we can provide resources or assistance or moral support to each other. Yeah, as well. I guess, and that may be one question for you, Kathleen, is the fact that since this is an Ontario-wide thing, what's Rotary doing on an Ontario level? Because we've got multiple districts who are going to be falling through the same thing from east to west, to ensure that maybe there is some commonality in all this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know, Mike and Sonia, if you can chime in on what at this point Rotary has come forward with to talk about ONCA in these clubs in Ontario. Have you seen anything else, Mike or Sonia?
I have not. I have had some discussions with my other Michigan district governors that have Ontario clubs, 6400, 6380, and 6290, about how they're supporting their helping support their clubs with this process, and they were clueless, right, about what was going on, because they're predominantly Michigan clubs, not Ontario clubs, and I have not reached out to my other counterparts in the other districts in Ontario to see what they're doing, but that's a great suggestion, and I will I'll take that, put that on my task list to take a look at.
Okay. Great. I haven't heard anything either in the DGE group. Right. I know it's a subject of discussion, but I don't know that there's been anything sort of formally coming down the pipelines from Rotary. So I think for the time being, working within our district is a good way to approach this to start with. How about Betty Southgate? You're from Goderich, is that right, Betty?
I am, and I see where Aurelio is here.
Ah, yes.
Betty and Aurelia are both from Godrich.
And I would add Godrich, but for some reason my participant thing only has mute and unmute on it right now.
I'll fix it for you. Go ahead. Go ahead, though. If you and Aurelia want to tell us what's going on in Godrich, that'd be great.
Do you want to start, Aurelia? Unmute.
Okay, yeah. All right, thanks. Well, by the way, I do have the other button. I was fiddling around with it a little bit. Okay. Barry actually did quite a bit of work quite a few years ago when this thing was, first came to light with the person that was president at the time. And, they put together a bit of a draft and all of that. And I had the chance to look through that. And myself personally, at the time, I was president of an association or a club and whatever you. So I was involved there in trying to, put something together. And we did put together a draft as well and all of that. And then, of course, it was deemed that we should wait until the thing actually, passed, sent to and all of that. And now, of course, they are fiddling around a little bit with the regulations. But this was my position at the time, was that if we needed to do something, the laws don't come before there is a need for them. There is a need for the laws, and then the laws come. So if the need was there, we should do whatever we needed to do. And then, we already had a draft, and the law had already passed Parliament, whatever it is. There's like two stages. I forget now which one was first and then the other one. And I said, it's not going to be tremendously different. The reasons for this thing to come to light is because, the people want these things to be a little different. And the main thing, of course, was the financials, which that was part of that, and the composition of the board. So transparency and all of that kind of, a couple of things like that. And so I think if we feel that that's a good idea, we should just go ahead and do it. And we should be, in compliance, because the law itself is already passed anyway. So it can never be too different from that. But the board at the time decided that, no, maybe we'll wait and whatever. So the draft sat there, and it's still there, and okay. Nothing has been done down there. So here with the Rotary Club, quite frankly, I didn't even know that we had done anything. And when this came to light again, Betty mentioned that, well, I really know why we worked on this back then, and I said, okay. So I read it, and to me, it's pretty good. So the main thing for me is that I could see and still see is this issue of the kinds of financials that you supply. So whether it is an audited financial or not, and the main distinction there comes whether you will consider the public benefit. I think that's what that's called, corporation or not. All charities are, public benefit corporations. Clubs may or may not be. Depends on how much money they get from this and that, other parties and other people outside of your thing. And there's a threshold. Our club, sometimes maybe, sometimes maybe not. Your clubs, it will be in the same situation. So we think, but even if it's not considered a public benefit corporation, even the clubs, there is something different in the law. So now you can just do review engagement, and that's fine anywhere you go with a new regulation, with the new law, and therefore the regulations. That is not the case. So you can, in order to have anything less than an audit for instance, for the charities, you need to pass a special resolution every year. And those are not so easy, because you have to have every single club member to agree with it every year. And then you can do, depending on your levels of money that you handle in the corporation, in the charity, then there's different things there. But you always need more than a review engagement. More than a notice to reader, unless you pass this resolution every year. So in the end, the law is similar then for the club and the charity, and that's kind of a little bit of the wrinkle there. But I don't think there's any way around it, quite frankly, that I found, and I don't think Betty found any way around that either. Whether that will be one of the little things that maybe the regulations will kind of change, but I feel not, because that was kind of almost the main reason to do this whole thing anyway. So I really don't think that's going to change. So that's now, Betty, if you would please, say something about this too, please.
Okay, so we have letters patent, and we have bylaws. Both of them are under the foundation, are very outdated. So we definitely will have to update our letters patent, which are now articles. And we do have a partial draft bylaws that we have worked on for a little while under the foundation. Under the club, the last time we updated our bylaws was in 2018. So they're not that far outdated. The big concern right now for us is, like someone else said, is getting this foundation compliant because there's a lot of changes required for it.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks, Betty and Aurelia. Barbara from St. Thomas, would you like to go ahead and let us know how you're making out with your club?
Well, this will be all very new. We have been talking for years, I think, about updating our bylaws, et cetera, et cetera. We have a foundation, so with its own board, and actually next Wednesday is our AGM for our foundation. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody knows anything about this. So I most appreciated having this little get together to get at least an introduction to what was going on. Thank you.
Okay. So your club is pretty new in the process then?
Yes, totally.
Okay. Sonia and Dave from Meaford.
I think we will ask Phil to start that conversation for us.
Okay. Is Phil there? Here. Hi, Phil.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have very weak Wi-Fi, and also I don't have my camera doesn't work, so I'm not in the best of. Anyway, I got involved in the charitable trust thing through applying for a grant that I got turned down on. So I'll tell you the complexity of the Meaford Club. We own an apartment building, so we have an account for that. And we have a charitable trust account. We have a community service account. And we have our general account that every club has. And that's basically our financial setup. The reason why I got turned down for the grant that I asked for is because the club owned assets. So I didn't agree with being turned down. So I hired a lawyer to find out why we could not get a grant for our charitable trust. And I basically found out maybe the foundation was a bit wrong, and maybe the way we did the process was a bit wrong. But in the end, the club is able to now get grants through the charitable trust. We have articles of incorporation. They're all good, and we have bylaws, but they're not up to date. I have spent a lot of time on this and got quite an understanding what a charitable trust is all about. And hopefully we'll start getting some grants and we'll get this thing to work. But the only charitable trust that the club has ever used is donations, and which we give CRA receipts for. And actually, I've been listening to you, and this is not that complicated once you start to figure it out. But it's all these bylaws that the Rotary wants that seems to sort of complicate things. But our patterns or articles of incorporation are in good shape. Our charitable trust was registered in 1967, and we're good to go. Now, I'm having difficulty with what you're talking about, that in a couple of years, I've got to do something. And I've been reading everything through, and I'm really mixed up on what we really have to do.
Okay.
In 2024 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
After everything I've done.
Well, you might need to consult legal counsel then.
Well, I have legal counsel, so yeah, I'll talk to our lawyer, because a lot of what we did, we had to do through legal counsel to figure it all out. But anyway, it looks pretty easy to me what we can do now.
Okay. Did Dave or Sonia, do you want to add anything about your club and ONCA compliance? Anything you need to add? No?
No need to add anything. Thanks, Catherine.
Okay. So
maybe if I can step in, just maybe on that, from what I just heard, then what we need is ONCA for dummies. And I'm not really trying to be facetious, but I'm just saying maybe we need a checklist of here are the basics that you need to do in order to accomplish the requirements of ONCA, period. Mm-hmm. So that everybody knows you got to at least do the following. And then then maybe you've got to do this, or if then, but like right now, I don't think collectively we have a checklist, but it would be good to be able to culminate it into a checklist that says, if you do all these things, you're going to be safe, right? You're going to satisfy the requirements. So, and I don't see that checklist on the government side either.
Well,
I agree with you. It's Phil Cantor, because when my lawyer started doing this with me, we went through a checklist of everything that we had to put into place to make this happen, and once we had all that together, it kind of fell together. It fell together pretty fast.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say, I said that it isn't really that complicated, but the articles of incorporation is where the whole thing starts.
Right. Aurelio, did you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I said, I think Betty wanted to say that too. There is actually a site that has an excellent checklist and some tools actually that you can go and see line by line, sort of, if your bylaws may be okay or not, and also tells you the main points to look for. Betty, right away I don't have the link here in front of me, but
it's the nonprofit Clio site.
Clio, yeah.
What you were referring to at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And that has a set of bylaws in there, and when you're going through them, you have options to pick how you do the wording as it pertains to your individual club. It is very good. That Clio site is very good.
I just put the link in the chat.
So that link is there for everyone to have a look at. Dave and Charlene are also from the Stratford Club, and they're the only ones left to speak. Sorry, Mike Chafee, I didn't include you because Flint is not in Ontario, so you're off the hook tonight. But
not yet.
Dave and Charlene, if you want to maybe talk about what's been going on in the Stratford Club, and then I'll let you take it from there, Dave, because I think we've gone through all the clubs that are here tonight.
Charlene, from your perspective,
I'm here to listen and keep abreast of things. You're the chair of the committee, and you inherited the paper file from Jim Young. David, go for it.
Thanks, Arlene.
Yeah. So we were entangled when we had a CRA audit that showed that we were not in compliance with a lot of things. So that's what the part of the 10-year journey that we had going. We have our final set of bylaws. As you, a second. The trick is stick handling what Rotary expects and what everything set up when you were when the groups were created. So we were created in 1922. So there's been a few changes since then. Some haven't really been taken into account. So and some things we were up to date on. So our foundation is in pretty good shape. We're in the final stages, and it was written fairly flexibly. So with a few changes of terminology and getting rid of the charitable aspect of it, our club is almost ready to go. What Aurelio said is quite correct. Is that there's a nice little chart or a table that you can create that sort of says, okay, if your income is below a certain level, and you're, as you said, a public trust or a public benefit corporation, which most of the charitable foundations would be, then if you're over a certain amount of income, then you have to have an audit. If you're in the middle ground, then you can say, okay, no, we would prefer not to have an audit. We'll just have a review. And if you're in the lower end, then just a simple review. If you're, like most of the clubs, a non-public benefit operation, then again, there's different rules and a lower threshold before you have to have an audit. So that's one of the sort of the impacting operations. So in your annual general meeting, you have to make sure that you appoint an auditor if you have to have appointed an auditor.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead, Phil. Did you have a question, Phil?
Yeah. Does anybody have some simple bylaws that could be shared, so I can get an idea how to do the bylaws? Because I don't really want to pay a lawyer to do it. I could probably figure it out myself now.
And this is Charlene speaking from the Stratford Club. And this thought has been going through my head as I listened through to the discussion. What do you think, David? Our bylaws, as you say, we're ready to roll here in Stratford. Ours have been vetted by the lawyer in Toronto. I forget the legal firm, but it was a really big name.
Carter's.
Yes.
Right? Carter's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we ready to share?
We could probably share. We've got a few changes that we need to make to it, but it's
because if I could find some bylaws, I'm pretty sure that the lawyer that I have could, because he's a Rotarian too, he could put these together pretty easily for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have shared our bylaws with a few other groups as well. I'm not sure that any of them are necessarily within the district.
Okay.
Yeah.
David, do you think this, where's this $10,000? I saw a figure tossed around of a $10,000 amount, which if you have income of more than $10,000, then all of a sudden you fall into another category of whether it's an audit or a review. Yeah, am I correct on that?
The 10,000 is one of the thresholds for the non-public benefit.
It's going to,
which comes
potentially it's going to kill some smaller clubs that don't have big revenue.
The $10,000 from a webinar that I was on today is from a government source. So
or donation.
Yeah, it's donation. It's donations, not revenue from the club. So your club operates donations from a non-third party.
Catherine,
yes.
If you would circulate that link that I sent you from the learner's lawyer.
Absolutely.
It's a very short read. It explains the levels and all of that, and it's not as scary as it sounds.
No, it's not. It's actually, I have that article up on my second screen here. It's a great, really short, brief article that covers a lot of details. So I will be sure to share that with everyone as well as that link that that Mike put in the chat. Yeah, so we'll make sure that information all comes to you.
The reason I mention that is there's a lot of difference monetarily between a review and an audit.
About double.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and we don't get either right now. It doesn't say it's a review and it doesn't say it's an audit every year. And our dinky little club, the size it is, there's $1,500 each year. So you can imagine if we're not pulling in $50,000 or $60,000 a year, there's a substantial, like if we're only pulling in 10 or less, that's a substantial amount of money to go out the door.
Bill, don't worry. It's $100,000 or under. You can waive it annually. You can just do notice to readers, so you don't have to worry about it. Read the article.
All right. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Going to send out because I'm sure, as I say, it's not as scary as it says. Like the levels are pretty high.
Yeah. I spent the morning on a whole webinar, so I haven't had a chance to go through all the material to pull out the necessary bits. But there were a couple of charts that were quite useful that sort of broke it all down.
So from your perspective, Dave, first step for some of these clubs that this is brand new to them, what would those first steps be?
The first step is find your letters patent, any supplements to the letters patent, and your existing bylaws. And then look for that checklist. And there's only a few things that have really changed. Like I say, one of the things is, the number of directors has to be stated in your letters patent as opposed to in your bylaws, which was the past case. So go through the checklist and find your key points and make sure that you comply, or if you don't, it shouldn't be too onerous, because they know that this is a lot of the not-for-profits are fairly small operations. And they're trying to keep it, as you say, transparent and simple, but provide the necessary framework to make sure that things don't get out of hand.
And Dave, do you have a checklist that our club has sort of gone through as we were going through this process?
Yes and no. A lot of our checklist was in Jim's head, or in documents that Jim had on his desk that didn't necessarily make it into external documents or frameworks. And as you say, some of it was done. We did part of it in conjunction with a whole CRA change around. So again, a lot of the burden on ours was CRA compliance, as well as the ONCA compliance. So I'm looking for a checklist that the Carter's in Orangeville has a very good, very complete website for charity and not-for-profit law. And so I'll peruse their list and see if I can find anything else that might be useful to the group.
That would be great. Then we could share that checklist with all of the clubs, just to sort of give everybody a starting point.
Yeah. But the first part is to have your necessary documents that you need to change.
Okay, so for a couple of clubs here, that means they've got a little bit of homework to do to find those letters patent and your existing bylaws. And then if the Stratford Club is okay to share their bylaws with the other clubs, that can give everybody sort of a starting place to go from. How's that sound?
Good.
Could I just ask, there's a comment that Aurelia made that brought to mind. Like, what brought ONCA on? Like, what's the objective of ONCA? What are they trying to fix? Does anybody know? Like, is it old, same old, not good anymore?
I can give some history on that if you like. Sure. And I know some of this because before I retired recently, I operated a consulting company, and we focused on obtaining government grants for companies. So, I could hear chatter in the sector. And about 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, there was a noticeable increase in the number of not-for-profit or number of charities being registered. And when they started to investigate these charities, a lot of them, quite frankly, have been registered for people just to have their own private source of income. They weren't monitored very carefully, and the money was not being spent in a way that any of us would think appropriate for a charitable foundation. So the province realized it was time. Was it Aurelio made the comment earlier that the laws come as needed? And that's why ONCA is slowly becoming or being created and implemented, because there was a need to correct abuse.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that background, Charlene. That's helpful to know that. Yeah. Okay, so Dave, next steps then, we're going to come up with a checklist, and we're encouraging the clubs to look for their letters patent and existing bylaws. We're going to share our bylaws with the other clubs. And then maybe we can schedule another one of these meetings so we can all get together and see how everybody's progressing. And then talk about ways, if there's some things that we can collaboratively work on here going forward. Does that sound like a good path forward? George, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just, it's funny to talk about bylaws, and we've gone through making a few changes in bylaws, but we don't file them with anybody. We just have them for our own purposes. And actually, as a matter of fact, now that I had the company key, I realized that the last president on record was from 1993 with the province. I don't think he's alive anymore. And none of the current board members are on there. And so, we never file, other than the, whatever it is, the 310 for the charities return with CRA, we don't do any kind of filing with the province. And so I imagine that I will find out that somewhere they'll have bylaws on record that may not meet or match the ones that we think we have, right? So I imagine that's quite possible or probable. So we'll have to find those first and then see what we need to do. I mean, at least I've updated all our directors and officers, but it was just of interest to me that we've never filed anything with the province. Not since I've been there, I should say.
Peter, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that, so you may find, George, that there's a disconnect between what CRA has for your directors and what the province will have for your directors. And this was in conversation with a former colleague of mine who's still with the ministry. And I asked him about that when we were fixing up stuff at our own church, and actually House of Blessing was fixing up stuff too. And he helped us through it. There's a disjoint between the federal government and the provincial. They were supposed to have set up a program that would allow them to sync together so that they would, because if you remember in years past, not this year, I don't think you're allowed to do it, but you would include a whole list of who your directors were and so on and so forth. There was an R-such and such form, which was attached to your 3010 that went to CRA. A portion, a component of that was actually provincial information. They don't want that anymore. That's the whole idea of the key. But the issue is there may still be that disjoint between what CRA has on record for the directors and what the province has on for directors, which, by the way, when there's a change, you have to notify the province within a very short period of time, a couple of weeks, once there's a change. So having the keys of benefit. But anyway, he said they never did get the program going, and so they never were able to connect. So that's a little bit of an anomaly, which we're still, because I still get stuff here that says I'm the president of the foundation, but haven't been the president of the foundation for probably 10 years. So it's sorting all that. I'm hoping that they eventually get their act together and get something where they can sync it together, because it's awkward when you're trying to get information and they won't correspond with or talk to you unless you happen to have your name on their list. So
right. Does everybody know what the company key is? Is everybody familiar with that? Do you have a company key? No. Yes.
I do.
We just got ours this year, actually.
Yeah, it just started as part of the proclamation of ONCA, as well as the Ontario Registry Board, and that there was, as Peter said, there was a component of the CRA filing that went back to the province, and that no longer happens, possibly because they didn't get it synced, and you have to file that separately through the Ontario board with your company key.
Okay. Yeah.
There's also a federal. You can actually get sort of a similar a key for going in and changing your directors or information that's on the federal site, on the CRA site.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different animal. It's not the same as the provinces.
No.
But it's the same kind of thing where you apply, they send you the top secret information by mail, and then you plug it in and you finally get in there. But anyway.
Okay.
It's not restricted to not-for-profits or charities. I deal with keys all the time with private companies.
Okay.
I got two really noisy grandsons in the background here.
That's okay. All right. Well, it's 7:58, and I do try and be mindful of time when we're having meetings. So unless anyone has any further questions or pressing comments that they want to make, well, I'll go through and I'll send some notes out on what we've discussed here tonight, and maybe David and I can work on that checklist, see if we can get something from Carter's, share some bylaws, and we'll talk about next steps in a few weeks. How does that sound?
Thanks, Catherine and David, for spending some time with the rest of us to help us with this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Have a good night, everyone, and we will talk soon.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.